I'm here with Q, also known as Q Physio on Instagram. We just finished a couple great days of training together. It was a lot of fun, a lot of great wisdom from Q in the rehab space, strength training space. So stay tuned in this video to watch us do a leg day, upper body session, and to learn a lot more from Q. Q, where can people find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can typically find me on Instagram at coach_Q_physio is probably the best place to find me. And now find me on YouTube on his channel.
Awesome.
You know, there's a market for people not loving or wanting this like super highly processed, product that's really well put together and scripted. He's like, sometimes people just want the dirty garage, the raw, like just gritty shit. There's a huge market of people who just really appreciate the realness of all that maybe you just lean into that a little bit. And I'm like, all right.
Dude, that's 100% my goal with these. Not that I have anything against people that have more like editing know-how and budget and all that, but I have found that some of these YouTube like training videos, I feel like they're too scripted and too theatrical to the point that like the things people are doing in the workout are like just for show.
Yeah.
Or just to like beat the hell out of somebody versus this is how real people actually train on a daily and weekly basis,
Right.
You're a physical therapist, so you're DPT, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But also strength and conditioning coach. You've worked on college sports teams, that kind of stuff. Tell me a little bit more about your background, like who have you worked with, what teams have you worked with, and what are you doing now?
Started as a strength coach primarily, always super interested in physical culture and coaching. I mean, I was kind of the kid even in high school where I was really the only one that was really consistently in the gym, and so I ended up training a lot of my own teammates who wanted to come work out with me, and that was kind of maybe my first taste of like what it would be to have clients. Is like I would have kids that I would specifically have to stay at the gym longer because so-and-so was coming after the kid that I personally trained with.
Yeah.
And then I'd have to wait for another guy on my team to show up and like kind of train him too. And that kind of was a revolving door a little bit through high school. And then even in college, that kind of same thing would continue. And oh man, dude, I would just pick the strength coaches' minds as an athlete. I was probably super annoying to them because they're like, I don't know, dude, just lift.
Yeah.
And I just want to go to their offices and I'd come through the athletic building all the time just to like chat with the strength coach. And I loved it. And I knew that was something I was super interested in. I think what drove me to pursue a master's degree in exercise physiology and then subsequently a DPT was like I was reading textbooks and I just kept thinking to myself, like, somebody's behind all of these words. Like, no, these just didn't just appear. Somebody had to like figure this stuff out, and it'd be really cool to be like on the front lines of like somebody who's thinking about and figuring this stuff out.
Yeah.
And I went the research route. And while doing the research route, I was in University of North Carolina getting a master's degree in exercise physiology, but I worked with men's and women's basketball there. And what a great like school and atmosphere to be around college basketball. I mean, UNC is just so historical and great players and national championship titles always coming through those doors and elite athletes. So it was really fun and really good coaching that I got exposed to early on, even when I didn't know anything. But it was that like initial getting in, seeing the college realm, working with these guys, and you get a big swath of things, a big variation of what is true. But I was so lucky to share a desk on my second year of my master's program with Greg Nuckols, who came through the master's program at UNC, and he had already had such a successful career in monthly applications in strength sport and Stronger by Science and writing articles, just such a smart, intelligent person. And so I would just kind of bounce ideas that I was hearing in the weight room from these other strength coaches off of him, and things that I thought were just inherently true because they sounded really good on paper. Like I always give the example, I remember specifically like talking to him about squat stance, and one of the basketball somebodies, I can't even remember who it was saying that you should always squat where if you're gonna go for a vertical jump and that's where you squat from because that's where you jump from, and Greg just challenged me so much on that, and just gave me endless examples of people doing like, he was like, I don't know, Bush Exnator over at like LSU with Lolo Jones is literally doing a sumo deadlifts and then literally like going outside and hitting the hurdles a few times. Like,
Yeah.
he doesn't do that. These are like Olympians winning, or on the stage for winning a gold medal, like some of the fastest people in the world. And just kind of really challenged all of the things that I was hearing at the time. And I'm so, so grateful for Greg, because that really changed the trajectory of everything that came thereafter. He was the one that introduced me to Derek Miles and the PT side of things, that it started to expose me to a lot of the stuff where in the collegiate setting at the time, strength coaches were, dude, like all into the manual therapies and all the fascial this and sling that and like all the cool, really sexy, novel sounding things, because you're trying to like find your value as a strength coach. I think, in the strength coach world, it's like, how do you get the one up on the next strength coach? Because like, it can't be that simple. Like strength and conditioning principles can't be that simple. So we've got to have the next like thing. And I think that still pervades today, especially like social media's, made that even worse. But Greg was just such like a grounding force, and so was Derek, just like, bringing me back to earth and like centering around the principles. And here's all the research evidence, and here's what we know. And this stuff is probably a wild goose chase. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And then all through PT school, I coached a high school football team that was down the road. I just did strength and conditioning with a high school football team in the mornings, which before PT school, which was so fun.
Yeah.
And then obviously with PT school, you have clinical rotations where you're essentially a free employee for other companies and other businesses, where you're seeing 15 to 20 patients a day for free as you're gaining your education. So you get a lot of exposure to different clientele. I worked at a VA, so I had like all 50 and up guys, vets with, dude, it was during like the pandemic. So, I mean, when I talk about, we saw some stuff, like things that are like 0.03% things that you might ever see in your life, like Cauda equina syndrome. Like you're never going to see that walk through your doors as a PT in a general outpatient clinic, like, or at least super rare. Or, peeing blood, people were literally peeing blood. And it was like, oh, okay, what are we doing? Like neuro exams. You got really good at detecting upper motor neuron type stuff like a clonus sign, which is hard in older populations because the reflexes aren't great, but like found some things where it was like, there's some serious pathology going on here, and this is like an immediate referral for imaging, like myelitis found more than once. Really sad, found a guy with like stage 5 cancer. He ended up passing away like 3 months later, but everyone was just telling me he had hip OA. And there was a lot of things in his story about like unrelieving pain, night sweats, appetite increase with increased weight loss, like things that just did not make sense. And his pain patterns did not make sense. The patterns of where we tested, like it all kind of was sensitive, and there was ended up imaging big cancerous mass in the femur, and so like just crazy stuff that we found. And also crazy injuries, people coming in with legs blown off from years ago, or shrapnel in the shoulder, but I also have rotator cuff pathology, so it's like, is this the is this getting blasted by a grenade problem, or is this like an overtraining problem? Like, so that was really fun. And then worked with a myriad of just different folks in the outpatient setting, with John Hodges in Reno, which was really fun. So big ACL. So I got really exposed to like ACL research and ACL side of things. So I had a good swath of things and never really left. And it was right after school. I think we talked about going to Montana, working in a powerlifting and strongman gym. And that was just a world that, I had loose ties with, but I was more on the athlete side. So like seeing what true, like, guys squatting 850, that's really cool. Like, I've never seen that before, and kind of got into that and ended up deadlifting a little over 700 pounds while I was working up there, because it was the environment, it was just like big pulls and big squats, and that was fun. And I don't really do that anymore. Still have some of that requisite strength left in the tank, but just have always had some finger in the pie of strength and conditioning. And I think PT, I saw everything in PT, and Charlie Reingraf has coined this years ago, but I think it's just so true, and maybe becoming a little bit more the culture of PT in the active setting is, training is rehab, rehab is training. It's the same damn thing. It's just on a different spectrum. You have different constraints or different considerations, but like, training is training, stimulus is stimulus, bodies are bodies. It doesn't change just because now it's slightly injured. Like, we have different loads that maybe take different times to adapt to certain things, but like, it's all the same thing. And it's just how you apply it and how you talk about it and how you help others work through that problem. I think on the PT side, you just have a little bit more complicated, nuanced conversations sometimes of psychosocial things, but you have that too in personal training. I mean, people have all kinds of psychological barriers and things like that. So it's all kind of the same, and I think I approach rehab in that same way, and that's why I love having the strength coach background, because you just see things a lot more practically, and like, yeah, it's hard.
Nice. Not only do you have the strength coach background, but you've deadlifted over 700, you were a college linebacker, lacrosse player, like you have a tremendous athletic history in your own right. How do you think that has informed your approach to physical therapy and like the stuff you do professionally now? Because that's not super common. A lot of PTs you go to, they haven't been physically active or fit on the level that you have.
Sure. And to be clear, I do not think I've been asked this question all the time. Like, do you have to be, a former college player of something, or do you have to be like super freak athletic to like work with athletes? I don't think that's true. I think you have to be passionate about it, and I think you have to train hard to yourself. But does that mean you have to be extremely successful at it? No. There's people that are going to reach your genetic potential, and that just is what it is. Does that mean that you also, because of your genetic potential, have a academic or coaching potential? No, I don't think those two things like are perfectly correlated. So I think as long as you're interacting with it at some level that's difficult, and having a taste for that, you can live a very Division I athlete life without being a Division I athlete. Like 100%. You understand the demands. Like even you just talked today about, you essentially had practice this morning. You went and you did an incline treadmill walk, and you pushed a little bit harder, and it was some volume, and now we're here training legs in the weight room, but you already were active. I sprinted this morning, because I like sprinting, and now we're here training legs, but so we just had practice for us, and it's not the same as a sport practice. And obviously there's different things that go into that as well, but you can have all of the same mentalities and understanding of the weight room. And so I would just say that I think competing at a high level, knowing what certain things feel like, I have also experienced a lot of training injuries, aches and pains, things that don't feel great, and knowing that these things generally come and go. It's a part of it. You're human, not to freak out, not to panic. I understand the consistency nature. I understand the grind of it. I understand what it feels like to wake up and not feel great. I understand the psychological identity robbing of my back hurts now, and I can't do all these things that I wanted to do, and just how fleeting these goals start to feel, and how much it can really impact so much of your life. And then being a coach and a PT on top of that, and you get injured, well, God, now you really don't know what you're talking about if you're getting hurt. And it's like, no. This is just being a human. And I think going through iterations of that has really helped me to talk with athletes and understand when they're telling me, and with tears in their eyes, the things that they can't do, or they signed up for a race. Like you talked about going to Iceland. Yeah. Can you imagine you're planning a whole trip around Iceland to race? Even if you don't feel great, there's probably going to come a time where you're like, I'm running this race, man. Yeah. And it just is what it is, and you're going to take that risk. But understanding how these things really impact people's lives beyond just the thing is, I think, majorly impactful and helpful of having that athletic background, and even continuing to pursue it now.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's easy to look at someone who's injured and just see it as a pathology and give a treatment plan, whatever, without understanding how it impacts their life and their emotions and their mental health, and being able to speak to someone on that level too, and address the biopsychosocial pieces of it, and make sure that not only is someone going to get better with their injury, but that they're going to keep doing things that are healthy for them and maintain a positive outlook. That's a really huge part of, I think, PT too, that a lot of the PT mill type places, just here are exercises, see you next time.
Yeah.
I think that's a big miss with some of that kind of stuff.
Huge miss, dude. And I think there's such a pressure for people to be the fixers, They want to feel like they're the knight in shining armor coming to save the day. And so you just have these for X diagnosis, just do this.
I believe I got myself doing hinges with this 700-pound deadlifter.
That was a once upon a time kind of thing. That is not a current deadlift. Maybe, I don't know. Let's see. The story behind that is I had never done a sumo deadlift before in my life, because you just don't do that as an athlete. I'd never done a sumo. It was a sumo pull. And I had hurt my back in Montana, just grinding away, training. And I could I could do hinging okay. I was bouncing stuff, like running, I was off the table. Anytime I tried to like bounce at all, it was like, oh God, like everything just seized up. But I could hinge okay, I could like RDL and trap bar. And somebody had just kind of passively mentioned like, maybe you should try sumo. And I was like, yeah, maybe I should, that'd be fun. Like it'd be fun little, cause I can't really, never done it before, so I'm gonna have to start low. Well, this was like 2 weeks, my back was still not good. And I pulled 675. The very first time I ever tried pulling sumo. Literally just kept stacking weight on because I was like, I don't know, it feels good.
Yeah.
I'll just go again. Like, I don't know,
awesome.
it feels pretty good. And then I was like, you know, if I just did this for maybe 3 or 4 weeks, like, I bet I could get over 700. And it was literally that. I just did it once a week after having back pain. And I ended up pulling like 705. Just still not able to really run because my back hurt. But I could pull 705 off the ground. And it took me all of 5 weeks to train for that. Crazy, you know, and I just never really did it again. But at the time, it was like really cool.
I can almost single leg deadlift as much as I can bilateral deadlift.
Wow.
Because like my legs can do it. It's just the back can't.
yeah.
The back can't hang. Even after I've been working on low back stuff specifically, like the last 2 years, I've hardly even done anything like this. I've just been hammering Jefferson curls.
Yeah.
And like it's gotten stronger, but still a single leg guy.
Well, your running volume too. I actually have a couple of endurance athletes that deal with like low back related issues when they're stacking miles.
Yeah.
And they can do something very mild in the gym and they're like, oh, it's getting a little spicy. Or like go for a really long run or some incline type stuff. And they're like, dude, like I'm kind of a little spiced up in my back. And I feel like the endurance world, I mean, it is so much like jostling. And people think of like endurance stuff as low force. No, I mean, running is running. Oh, yeah. Even at low loads, like we talk about like calf and Achilles type stuff, like whether you're jogging or full tilt sprinting, the load through the calf is like relatively similar. It's not that different.
Yeah.
So then you do that for the course of 8, 9, 10, you went for what, a 21 something mile run? Like that's high forces expended over a long period of time, dude. And that goes up the chain too. Like something's gonna have an issue over time, like adapting to that kind of stress, and it may just take longer to adapt than maybe somebody who only is doing this. You know, they have a lot more in the tank to like dump their energy and adaptation into this alone. And
this is peak week for me for marathon training. So this is my highest mileage week, and over the last few weeks, like training's been pretty hard, and it's low back stuff that has been the hardest to maintain in the gym. Yeah, like I've still been progressing squats. Even when tired, like after a long run, my squat numbers are still going up, which is great. But like trying to hit some hinges, Jefferson curls, stuff like that, the last few weeks have been like, oh God. Yeah. Yes, sir. Oh yeah. Do you ever lift with a belt? Do you like lifting with a belt? I never even bother, man. Really? I don't have anything against it. Yeah. I'm just like a minimalist when it comes to accessories and things I have to worry about accidentally leaving behind at the gym. The gym. Well, you know, there's so many people that, you know, early on in the strength and conditioning career was like, oh, you have to wear a belt because it's stability, and then there was a huge swing of like belts don't do shit, like there's no spinal changes with that, you know, and now we've kind of come full circle of like, well, we have a decent amount of research that when you do wear a belt, your power output on a force plate is typically higher. Yeah. And that's kind of what I think of. I'm like, am I worried about my back? No. But like, am I gonna lift more aggressively and just put more juice into the bar? If I am, sure, I'll wear a belt. And I don't care what these like people say about like, oh, but your weakness, you know, is you're creating core instability by wearing the belt. And it's like, well, I'm lifting 50 to 75 pounds more with the belt on, so I think I'm gonna be just fine. I don't hear a lot of extremely strong people say those sorts of things. Yeah, right. You just don't. Yeah, the very strong people never worry about that kind of stuff. Yeah. As a physical therapist, I think a lot of people watching this might fall into a couple camps. One, they just don't have good access to quality PT where they live, and or they don't have a huge budget to like every time something comes up to hire someone or do consults or that kind of thing. So they're often self-managing. Or two, people have gone to PT and maybe had not the best care, the best experiences. For people in those two camps, if you had to give advice of like, if you can't come and see me, if you're not satisfied with your current quality of care, like here are just some things to keep in mind, like basic principles, common misconceptions, just like overarching guiding things for people to think about when dealing with some pain and injury on their own. And then maybe follow that up with like here's some red flags of like, no, like you really need to get help kind of thing.
This is not a plug even for myself to people come see me. This is across the healthcare industry where I think e-consults and remote consultation, remote care of physical therapy is one, great, but it's also proven to be just as effective. During the pandemic, there was a lot of research on how did physical therapy via telehealth stack up against functional return and pain reduction and all that stuff against in-person PT, pretty equal. And even patient satisfaction across the industry was really good, like much better than I think people maybe would have expected. And the pandemic really shined light on how, thank you, how impressively effective that remote care could be, and that the outcomes were really good. And I think I still have people, when they reach out to me, there's hesitancy of doing remote care because they're like, oh, I was really hoping to see you in person, like, or I don't know if, I think I need to go see somebody in person, because there's this idea that if somebody like looks at you and touches and feels the thing and like watches you move, that they're gonna discover like all these asymmetries and muscle imbalances and all the right patterns and things that you need. Like we talked about the predatory kind of stuff that happens in both PT and personal training of like, oh yeah, see how you're, all these little things that are sold to people as being these like fixes and I'm gonna like help you and you need me now. Rarely are there cases, and when I say rare, I talked about cauda equina syndrome being like 0.3% of like cases at large.
Yeah.
And that's gonna vary a lot depending on the setting you're in. Like if you're in a trauma center, or you're in like a neuro center where you're getting like neuro things referred to you, or an internal medicine doctor whose primary stuff is dealing with like neural type stuff, you're gonna see a higher percent because more of your patient base is that 0.3 now. So like that's different, but in the general public and the people that have seen, especially somebody who's even considering reaching out to someone online, typically issues have gone on for a month or two before people are considering reaching out to somebody online, versus like if you had something that was disease, pathological, a real serious red flag, you would probably know a little sooner, and that might not be something that you're going to be online consultation based around. So that already is weeding out a ton of people, and I don't think that there should be as much hesitation around reaching out to people online. So even if you don't have in your geographical location, online rehab is extremely effective, and it can be very collaborative. It can be very fun. I mean, I've had so much fun treating people online, and other people that do this as well. The other thing is, we talked about the financial piece of it, that we don't have time or we don't have money to come up with the financial piece every time I have an issue.
Yeah.
Well, I think that comes from a very short-sighted PT approach, where if I'm treating someone for this one issue, that's what happens with big insurance companies. And what you get on the outside is you have an ankle issue. Well, my wrist hurts too. Well, I can't treat you for that. We're treating for the ankle, and all of my coding for the medical database of why you're here for this visit has to be based on the ankle. I can't treat that and this and that, and whereas online, full spectrum, we got access to everything. Whatever you got, we got it. The other thing is too, like all of the care should be centered around making you feel like you can self-manage, that you're self-efficacious in being able to like take care of this when it does pop up in the future, because an injury history is more likely to cause that same injury down the road. So we know that if you've had it once, like there's a chance, possibly a higher chance than somebody who's never had it, that you'll have it again.
Yeah.
So how do I just give you all of the mental frameworks and tools to deal with this down the road, or even other injuries that are somewhat related? Like you have this huge mental framework of how I can manage my health, that where I'm not feeling like I have to reach out to a healthcare professional and over-medicalize my problem every single time something pops up, because now I have this wealth of information that my PT that I worked with for 5 or 6 weeks helped me understand that, like, yeah, I think I got the gist that when things pop up in the future, I kind of know, and maybe if I run into problems after like 3 months of working around this thing and I've tried all these principles and then it doesn't work, okay, yeah, maybe we just have a one-off consult, but it doesn't become this huge, extravagant program and this thing anymore.
Yeah.
And that's the direction of healthcare, where we're not so bloated with constantly seeing people for every nick and thing, and every little problem that pops up. Like, we have to improve the health literacy of our country, and it starts with delivering good healthcare that is like helping you as a person manage your problems, not me coming in and like let me be the fixer of your problem and just come to see me every single time. That's not the type of healthcare we're trying to build in America right now.
I hate seeing, and I don't think anyone has bad intentions with it, but I think sometimes what happens in PT is someone goes in for an injury and they get a list of exercises that fix that problem.
Yeah.
And then so if that person has a different injury in the future, they're like, I need help. Like, what are the exercises that fix this problem?
What are the special exercises?
Versus just knowing general principles of how to address something, you know?
3.
Let's go.
I've been dealing with lateral hip pain.
Okay.
In that like the greater trochanteric pain syndrome kind of thing,
Like
right on that.
glute med insertion thing.
Yeah, and I've dealt with it on my left side before, and you know it's gone now, but it's kind of popped up a little bit. And man, I told you I like warming up with playing basketball, and I was wearing these shoes, these Metcon shoes.
Get a little more range of motion on that.
Oh
I
heck
think.
yeah, yeah, that's perfect.
But yeah, we can put a plate on that.
And I've been doing so good where the outside of my hip has been really getting to a point where I very rarely have felt it over the past 2 weeks. And it's only if I really push. And this past week, dude, I went to, the ball had come off the rim and I was like coming in like this, but these shoes have just plastic right here.
Oh,
I slid out on the court and landed
dude,
straight on my hip. Like, this was only like 2 or 3 days ago, and I hit the ground and I was like, I might cry. This hurts so bad. It was right on the hip point, and it is still so sore. And I was like, God damn, I was doing so good treating it. I had been so good with my load management, and then just to like totally jack it up on a court while warming up was the dumbest thing.
Actually, so on my long run, I run with like, you know, collapsible water bottles.
Yeah.
And I finish one, and I stuff it in the pocket of my tights. And the nozzle of the water bottle was poking into my quad. And it was kind of uncomfortable, but I just kept running.
Because everything's
Just because
uncomfortable?
everything is uncomfortable. So I'm like, God, that's annoying. And I would like kind of mess with it a little bit, but I just had this nozzle pushing into my quad. Probably ran 10, 15 miles on it that way. Now there's like a swollen lump there.
Yeah.
And it hurts. I'm like, I didn't think that was gonna happen, but sometimes it's the dumbest stuff.
It really is, dude. Yeah, I like that. A little extra range there I think is gonna be perfect. Kind of what we were just talking about, maybe to finish, some thoughts there is, I don't think that PT needs to be one of these things that people seek out often. And I have a lot of folks that I continue to train that just enjoy it because they can afford it and they like it. They don't need it, and they know that too. And our relationship there's so much less transaction there because we both are benefiting from this situation, and we both like find fulfillment in it, that it becomes a little less transactional of, cash for help kind of feeling, and more just like we have a relationship. And I think a lot of physical therapy and healthcare in general should be about human relationships, less about I'm this, AI system, this robot that just rushes into the room, you tell problem, I tell fix, and I leave. There has to be a lot more dialogue, because in treating even very serious health conditions where medical care of a higher grade is necessary, the level of conversation that needs to be had around that, let's take something really extreme, like end-of-life care. In our westernized culture, we've gotten into a habit, so to speak, of trying to save life at all costs, that keep this person alive, whatever it costs.
Yeah.
And Nicole Piemonte talks a lot about, in her books like Death and Dying, or I think it's Death and Suffering, one of those two titles. Sorry, Nicole. She's fantastic, by the way. But talks about like end-of-life care should be a lot more of a shared decision-making with the person of like, do they want this end-of-life care? Do they understand the risks? Do they understand the cost, the healthcare cost? Do they understand how uncomfortable the remainder of their life may be, even if they do pass? Do they want the final months of their life to look like this, to be chained up to a hospital bed with tons of tubes, and that's how they're remembered by their family? Or do they want to just continue living their life? They've got a wedding coming up in 3 months, like there's a decent chance they'll make it to that wedding, but they'll likely pass, soon after. Maybe that's their decision. That shouldn't be the healthcare. So even in something that's very highly medically managed, it should still be a shared patient decision-making model where there's a relationship with people. And I think that in the care space, that one, where we started was seeking remote care is quite affordable relative to what you would be paying out of pocket with your copays with insurance, because you probably don't need as many visits, and that care will last you a much longer time because you're going to get a program and ideas versus like I'm seeing 3 or 4 people at the same time and you get 10 minutes of my time periodically, right? So you're going to get better care that will last longer. It's shown to be quite good at treating people, and that the worrisome parts can be picked up in a good conversational interview with somebody. You're going to pick up on like the more serious, dangerous stuff that may need medical attention. And we're not just going to breeze over that. But, and then you don't have to be this like Mr. Fix-It. Give people long-lasting solutions, and you know, I think that it then becomes a lot more equitable and affordable for people. I was listening to a podcast even this morning on, you know, more internal medicine doctors talking about cash-based models and subscription services for doctors have far outperformed the insurance-based models in a lot of settings. You know, and I think the same can be true with PT. How many did you do here?
I used to do 5.
Is that 4 or 5 right there?
4.
Okay, good.
There you go. Does that feel good for you, or do you need more space with that back leg?
I've actually been doing a lot of crowded lunges recently here,
Yeah.
so I kind of like it.
Yeah.
I kind of like it. It would help if I was a little bit stretched out, because I could take advantage of the stretch and get a little bit more passive tension, but I kind of like this
Yeah.
crunchy feeling.
It's tough.
Yeah, it's very, very tough. You know, and I'm not trying to be cynical of in-person care or cynical of people who seek that out. I understand that there are folks that they just need that, and they just would feel like they'd have such better peace of mind.
Yeah.
But man, I'll tell you, we have this conversation all the time with people that, you know, just like any industry, physical therapy, physicians, we're humans. You're gonna make mistakes, and we're not, you know, somehow immune to what happens in other industries. If we dropped a pin and said, hey man, Alec, I'm hungry, let's go eat. And we're in Minneapolis, like maybe a better food scene than some places, but if we dropped a pin in a 5-mile radius around where we are right now, 80 to 90% of the places are just gonna be people that don't really care about working there. You're gonna get mediocre food, and someone's just checking in, checking out. You know, those are Wendy's, McDonald's, these chains, like people just there for a job, man, and trying to provide the minimum effective service and get out. Get that, totally get that. Lower cost, whatever. But that's the experience you're gonna get, you know, and 80 to 90% of PT is gonna be that too. People that aren't super passionate about what they do, it's a job, they're trying to make ends meet, they're just humans the same way that everyone else is, just trying to make it through life and deal with all the other stressors they have. And PT isn't their one clear thing that they're like superiorly passionate above all else things in their life that are stressing them out, right? But then you're gonna have that, like, you know, that next 5 to 10% of people that maybe haven't figured it all out, you know, but they're really passionate. Those hole-in-the-wall mom and pop place that are really trying to figure out how to deliver a better service. And you're gonna get more concierge type services. You're gonna get little freebies, little discounts, and really feel like somebody's taking care of you, like a waitress who's been there or a waiter who's been there for 20 years and just loves this thing, you know, and they maybe, you know, they don't have it all figured out and it's not the greatest food ever, but dude, what a different experience that is. And you're gonna do the same with PT, right? There's gonna be people who maybe don't have the gurus or, you know, haven't done this for so long that they know a lot, but they know enough and they're trying to do so much better. And then there's gonna be that next like 3%, 2 to 3% at the very upper echelon of restaurants that are like life-changing. Like you're gonna pay for it and it's gonna be amazing, but like you're gonna remember eating that food for a long time or remember the experience. And the same with PTs, you know, there's gonna be some PT, and it may be different. There's not just like a categorical top 3%. It's different for everybody of who becomes that for them. But somebody who really cares and is really passionate and really like wants to help you and is doing what they can and knows a lot in this space to have these, sit down with you and have these conversations at length. You know, your experience with them, it very well could be life-changing versus just care. And so, yeah, do you pay for it sometimes? Sure, but do you want a life-changing experience or you just want run-of-the-mill like Wendy's, you know?
I think it was a study I saw comparing like 1 PT visit to 12 PT visits or something like that. And it was like 1 visit is often just as good as 12.
Correct.
You know?
Yep.
But people always want to sell you on 12
of course,
versus the 1. And like, a huge chunk of my business is ongoing coaching, you know, people that see me every month and pay every month and that kind of thing, but it's not the right fit for everyone.
Yeah.
And I think some people undervalue and discount how much they can get out of a one-off. Like
Yeah.
I do a lot of just in 30 minutes, like there's so much value you can provide for someone, especially if they are just like totally clueless, they don't know where to start. Like you can get someone off in the right direction in 30 minutes
Yeah.
and have such an enormous impact on their life in a very short amount of time, and it's very affordable for them.
100%. Yeah, you're referencing a very good study that we talk about a lot, and also in that same realm of things is that, you know, I kind of mentioned this before, that 70% of musculoskeletal problems will likely just heal on their own if you just do absolutely nothing but just keep living your life.
Yeah.
So like, you're not going to do anything crazy magical. You can see a mediocre PT and probably do okay too.
Yeah.
Because like as far as your pain goes, probably this particular issue goes, because it's probably likely that it would regress to the mean of probably getting better anyways. Where the difference happens is maybe where people have that more like long-standing wherewithal of how do I manage new problems, or do I have new ways of looking at my body, my health, my fitness, my psychological, you know, situation around training, around problems. Where do I want to go with this that helps care in the future versus always seeking a little bit more care, a little bit more care.
That's the argument I get into with PTs and coaches and stuff when they try to say things about, and I don't want to make this a black and white conversation about manual therapy, but when they get on the topic of like, well, it helps with pain, so I might as well do it, and that sort of thing. I'm like, yeah, but like someone's paying to see you for a very short amount of time for a condition that's probably going to get better anyway. So like, what is really the best use of your time with that person? Is it something that is not educational at all, isn't going to change their long-term fitness at all, isn't going to change their outlook on their health or their body at all?
Right.
When there's so many other things that would help their pain just as much that also do those things.
Yeah.
To me, the opportunity cost, I'm like, how can you justify it?
And even the 12 visit idea is a bad business model to see them one time, only in the context of what's currently promoted and what currently is normal, right? And so we had this conversation yesterday at breakfast that the idea of like treating pain and making people feel good and giving them this like, oh, I can help you feeling of, oh, people came in and they felt bad and they can leave and they feel better. I look awesome and that's what they came to me for. That's what they paid for. So that's what I'm going to give. That only makes sense in the current environment that we've created for people to pander that service to them. But if you change the model entirely where PT now is very likely a one-time visit to help and curate a program around the issues and have in-depth conversations about all the things that need to happen here and get other care providers, coaches, PT, personal trainers, family members, whoever it might be involved in their team and create a care plan that actually gives them long-term success in this thing. Now your business model is maybe seeing a lot more people, diversity of people, one time, that now have longer health benefits for longer periods of time. And now your model where you are seeing people more often are for things that maybe do need to be managed more often, not just the clumb of all the folks that probably don't need it, but you're making them feel like they do. And if we had a business model that was that, it wouldn't be as hard to pay more money for a one-off visit, because you know that one visit isn't going to take care of you for a while, or it could. So we just changed the scheme of the culture, and that is very frustrating for people that don't understand that, and they just want to keep promoting and propagating what's been done in society, even if it's not effective, and you're just playing into the hand of this game that's been created for you before you were even a clinician. You know, you were brought up into this world, but it doesn't mean you have to keep playing the game of it. Yeah. You know?
That's what I tell people, even selfishly. They're like, well, I have to make money. I'm like, yeah, and you can make more money long term. Because if you get people to realize how much they can get out of 1 hour, you can now charge a lot more for 1 hour instead of having to discount a 12-pack or whatever.
Yep.
And it just makes more sense long term. I think it's just a tough transition for people.
Yep, absolutely, dude. Oh, buddy. Yeah.
I don't know how much this weighs, but it feels heavy.
Yeah, I'm worried for myself here. That's why I'm strapping up.
Oh, easy.
I had to really.
You got to psych yourself up to rip that first one.
Yeah, this one's gonna be a little painful. But I'm gonna take some mental acetaminophen right now, some ibuprofen to the brain, by telling myself I'm okay, and
It works. I think there's a switch you can flip to power up to that next level.
Oh yeah. Still got plenty in the tank.
Oh
too.
yeah.
Yeah, that's what we're telling ourselves. Okay.
Let's go. Oh yeah.
Is that 5?
I don't know. We'll play it back later. It's funny, you talking about taking some mental acetaminophen. I can't remember his name. There's an ultra runner I was following for a little bit, and in like long 100 and multi-day events, if he was having a hard time, like thinking about quitting, he would stop, he would sit down, he would close his eyes, and he would visualize that he was starting a new event in that moment.
Yeah. Wow.
And he said like that was enough to keep him going.
Sure.
Just going through that visualization and getting that like fresh start energy.
That's some David Goggins level
Yeah.
stuff we're talking about here,
Yeah.
which is not always a good strategy.
Not always,
as we
but-
have all found out at times in our training history, that just having that push at all costs through everything is not helpful, and that's certainly not how we're talking about treating people when we talk about remote physical therapy. So just to be clear, that is not how we approach things with folks. However, again, going back to having an athletic background and currently training as a healthcare provider, pushing yourself to do hard things, you get a sense of like, it's not always ideal.
Yeah.
And guess what? It's okay. Because I just landed on this hip so hard a couple days ago. I know this is not going to feel good right now, but I also know that it will be better in 2 weeks from now. And so, what's the cost? Am I doing something fun with a buddy right now where we're just pushing weight and having fun in here?
Yeah.
Yes. Is that worth the trade-off of being a little sore tomorrow or the next day, maybe more sore than if I hadn't done it at all? Yeah, absolutely. The trade-off is 100% worth it. And just being able to like think about that and not worry about optimizing every possible thing in my life. It's okay, and I'll probably be better for it because I've pushed through this. What can I push through in the future, potentially in just life in general? And I don't think that, we talked about this, I don't think that the gym culture needs to feel like this whole like alpha mentality and like do hard stuff. Because like, you want to talk about hard, being like a single mom with 3 jobs, that hard. Being, financially destitute and having to scrap for everything you have, feeling unsafe in your home, war, true war, hard. We do not know hard. But this is something that in our little world of hard, in our little westernized culture, that we can push things to a degree where it's not so optimized in every aspect, and we're going to be okay because of it anyways,
And it drives me nuts when people talk about it being that hard, because like it is a choice. We're here voluntarily and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But also like doing anything in your life better than you're currently doing it is challenging. So like no matter what we're talking about, like you like do better at your job. That's hard.
That's hard.
Do better at home. That's hard. Like anything that you're currently doing, I'm sure you're not doing it as well as you could possibly do it.
Correct.
So there's other ways that you could experience hard and challenge. It doesn't have to be the challenge of the gym. What I think is really valuable about the gym is you get to like dose it appropriately, experience what it's like to push yourself and see almost immediate payoff of like, I pushed myself this week, I was stronger next week. Yeah. Like you see the process kind of condensed. And I think it's like an easy way to set up those small victories of like, this is what happens when I commit to something. And I think it makes it easier to push yourself in other parts of life because you've seen how the process works, and you experience the reward. So I think there's tremendous value in it from that standpoint. But the whole like tough guy thing and like I do ice baths because they're hard. I'm like, there's really not anything else in your life you could try harder at. So there's
pick anything.
There's both sides of it, I think.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned the benefit too, and yes, you get the immediate benefit of accomplishment, of sense of like I did this, but you have that delayed reward of I'm training something now that I will probably reap the rewards of 6 months to a year from now if I'm just consistent.
Yeah.
But like, am I going to get a faster 40 time or a better vertical jump because I'm doing this today? No.
Yeah.
If anything, I'm probably going to see a acute decrement in those measures. It's what am I training for down the road? How am I building a body and an engine that will tolerate those things at a higher level later? And it's always that delayed gratification too. So, all right, buddy.
All right,
Come on.
This is the last one. We go
Yeah, I might have to go up, dude.
5 or 6. Yeah.
Yeah, for last one. Go full send.
What are you gonna put on there?
I'm thinking at least a 25, dude. You want to go 25?
Let's go 25.
Fuck yeah, dude. I knew I could talk him into
Let's
it.
do it.
Yeah.
I kind of like. I like sticking to the same exercise for a while and like seeing progress and whatnot. But sometimes it's fun to get on like a new thing where like you have no. I have no concept of what we're even doing here.
Correct.
Like how much weight are we lifting? How does this compare to, like, I don't know. We're just sending it.
Yeah.
And I like that.
I do too. You know, I do a lot of that in rehab for people that if they're, especially people that have a longer training history and squats are bothering them, I'll pick a variation of squats that they just don't usually do or haven't done maybe ever.
Yeah.
Just because they have no concept of what is actually good, but they know their back squat number.
Yes.
And they have something to attach it to. But doing like variety in rehabilitation can sometimes totally change the landscape of what they perceive as good, and you remove their comparative nature to their ideal version of themselves versus where am I going with this? And you can just send it, like you said.
I love that.
At a level that's like, well, I don't know. It felt like an RPE 7 and that was programmed. I don't know any concept of that it was good or bad, but
Yeah.
it felt like it, and that's exactly where we want to live
And they
sometimes.
just see themselves progressing, like in the context of that exercise, not in comparison to something
Yes.
else. That's so
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Come on. Yeah, through, baby. Drive it through. Come on. Good. Get out, get out, get out. Stand with it. Nice.
Yes.
Dude.
More?
Yeah.
Oh, come on. There you go. 4. Didn't even give me a chance to try to match you.
No. No, it's
I see what you did there.
the mental game that, well, I still had, that was my strong leg. So I started in with the mental intimidation of the left, and then the right leg may just end up giving us the quits.
Yeah.
So come on.
Left side.
Yeah.
I should have started with the left.
Left side, best side. No, I was just thinking that too. So maybe I should have just gone with my right leg, since I don't know if I would have made the bump. Now I have something to, the comparative thing. Now I have to compare this side to this side. Damn it, Q.
It's funny because people always say like start with the weaker side, but sometimes I just like want to do the stronger side.
Yeah.
So then I have to get it.
Yeah.
Like it gives you that target to reach for.
It really lowers my apprehension, because I think to myself, like, both of these legs have experienced similar training loads over the past year, decade.
Yeah.
I know that if this leg can do it, this leg probably can too.
Yeah.
Even if it doesn't feel great right now, if I do it on this leg and it's like, that was pretty easy, then I'm like, all right, Q.
Yeah.
You have structural integrity enough to tolerate this.
I convince myself that there's some sort of acute cross-education effect, and like because I've just done it on this side, that like the neural drive is going to be there for the next side.
Yep.
I don't know, but that's what the lies we tell ourselves to get through a session.
Yeah. Time, big toe. Yeah, buddy.
Oh, I think this machine setup feels really nice.
It does. Yeah, if I were to come back to it, just because of my height, I might
Another plate.
I might do a little bit deeper. But
Yeah.
right now, where I'm at, like in my training block and my goals right now, it's okay to have a little bit less range of motion for
Yeah.
me. Like doing like more of a box squat type feel is fine.
You got it. All right.
Come on.
Hell yeah, dude.
Right leg or left leg first?
Let's go right leg first.
All right, gotcha.
Well, let's tell the camera what we're doing.
Oh yeah.
So we're doing
Let's do that, Alec. Please.
so we're doing manual resistance. So the Q's just gonna push my hip. We're doing this like side plank hip dip that you've probably, if you follow me, you've seen me do on my Instagram all the time. But I think we're gonna get some really spicy loading with the manual resistance. Q's just gonna push as hard as he can. I'm gonna try to fight him. Going for like, you said 5 by 5 seconds?
Yeah. Yeah.
Good-
Good
good
25
protocol on
seconds
this
worth
one?
of work there.
And will this be a one set wonder, you think? Like just,
You know, we might end with 2, just like we did yesterday on some of the upper body stuff. We might end with 2. Let's try. One more. Come on. Come on. You monster. You fucking monster.
holy shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
Dude,
a
I
lot.
had to push hard.
Yeah.
I had to push really hard. I was surprised. When I first gave you pressure, I was like, yeah, it's pretty tough. He's not moving. Yeah, we're working. Yeah. Good. Come on. Come on. Yes, dude. Come on.
One more, come on. All right.
Dude.
A little bit of a workout for me too.
That is good.
That's a really good one.
Wow. That was different, dude.
That was different for sure.
I think 1 set might be.
I was gonna say, I feel pretty good.
or we go just 1 round of like a 15 unweighted or something.
I think that sounds good.
to
I
finish.
think a
Yeah.
second set of eccentric overload is gonna wreck me.
Holy smokes.
I think just a big volume set will be,
Okay. Yeah.
I'll be good. Sometimes just trying to do them fast, like a speed set, just like rip 30 for time.
Burn it.
Feels pretty good.
Okay.
I might try
Sure.
something like that.
Wow, that was crazy. I was like, dude, are you just never gonna stop? The way you were doing those was like, there's no end to this guy.
Feels real light now, doesn't it? Just the manual resistance, it's not uncomfortable at all. You can just actually focus on pushing as hard as you can.
And just feeling like I don't know what it is, just another human like manhandling you around like that. It's like different, like, oh man, this is game on. Like, I don't know, you said, did you wrestle?
A little bit.
Yeah, like wrestling is probably one of the most aggressive sports that I ever did growing up. It's just so hard to grapple with another human and feel like every muscle in your body is tensing to move them one way and they're trying to move you the other.
Yeah.
There was just nothing more fatiguing and exhausting and just sheer gritty as wrestling was. I have so much respect for those athletes that continue doing that.
I feel like manual resistance in practice, usually it kind of turns into like isokinetic,
Yeah.
you know, and that it's just brutal because it doesn't matter where you are in the rep, you're working as hard as you can. I always wonder like if the technology was cheaper and more accessible and like just any gym you walk into has like isokinetic machines for anything you can imagine, like how that would compare, like what people would think about it, what would the outcomes be if people were just like hammering isokinetic stuff all the time?
You know, I don't know. There's a Poseidon Fit. Have you seen them? They make all isokinetic machines, like hack squats, pressing. It's all isokinetic.
Isokinetic hack sounds torturous.
Absolutely miserable.
Oh
yeah.
my God.
And they have a screen there that you'll see your force readings. Given the load that's on there, you know, you can see, you know, how much force you're actually kicking into it. And, you know, I think it sounds fun, but my hesitation with it, and I think it could be great for a rehab scenario where somebody doesn't really feel safe, but they know that this thing isn't going to come down and crush them, right? And I can just push as hard as I want to.
Yeah.
I think that's good, but where I might find hesitation is I think that there's going to be some neuroinhibition with that, where I'm going to reach a point where I think I'm pushing as hard as I can.
You don't get the feedback of it, like it's slowing down because you're not pushing as hard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And that's where I don't think for strength and for like an athlete that doing all isokinetic training would be beneficial, because like when you're lifting something heavy and you feel it accelerating, it makes you give it even more juice. Or this idea of like, I feel like I'm going to get crushed by this weight, I have to stand up with it. Like for instance,
Yeah.
when we were doing that and I got to my right leg and I'm having some of that lateral hip pain, I may have stopped a lot earlier in the actual force production if it was just moving under my own volition, versus it will not move until I exhibit this much force. There's a threshold that I had to reach in order to move the weight. And so I go back and forth where I think that there's limited utility in isokinetic training because of that reason. There's just...
I see that. I think about that with ISOs too. I think you might have mentioned this earlier yesterday with doing ISO, just like pushing into the rack.
Yeah.
Like you don't get the feedback. Are you actually pushing as hard as you can, as opposed to like having to just hold a weight and not drop it, sort of thing. That's how I do my calf ISOs. I don't know if you want to do. I'm gonna do some of those today. I just try to hold it as long as I can.
You get the
You know?
fasciculation
Yeah.
happening. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't think, maybe just because I've done the overcoming isos a lot, that I really feel like I can give it some beans, like
Really?
on against a rack. Like I see or I feel the bar start to bend, and that gives me even more like feeling of
Yeah.
like, I'm gonna break this thing, and like
Yeah.
I'll go really hard. And I don't think I could get that if I was just holding. But on a bear squat machine, like a belt squat, I'll do those, the holding ones, and just put on more than I've ever put on before, and try to like get onto one foot
Yeah.
and just hold, and it's like, oh buddy,
Yeah.
like that's where you start feeling like this is an enormity with force. And so I do think that there's a level of stability that could be trained there in its terms of the setup being really stable. Then maybe a holding isometric could be just as, maybe even more beneficial than as a pushing. I don't know.
I'll go up for a set of lengthened partials and then hit a couple isos and be pretty good.
8, 9, 10, 4, 50. Oh, wow.
All right, and
Go. All right. Oh, yeah. 5, 10, 15.
Yeah,
Heavy, man.
that's very heavy. I like that a lot. See, and like you said, there's something to that holding where it is what it is. And if you give even a little ounce of effort off the pedal, you'll get crushed.
Yeah.
So you can do nothing but hold. Yeah,
I like it a lot.
I'm down. I'm down. I love the overcoming, just for the ease of setup for most things that you can do. But
I think for really short, like if I was gonna do, I think I saw you post a protocol of like, was it 3 seconds push?
Yeah. Yep.
How long do you rest? Like 3 seconds on, how many seconds off?
3 on, 3 off.
Times 4 or 5?
4 or 5 reps per thing I do.
Okay.
And I usually wait about a minute to 2 minutes between.
Yeah.
And then go again and maybe do 2 rounds or 3 rounds of that total. If it's not a standalone.
That makes more sense as a overcoming.
Yeah, and
I think so.
preparatory, like, or on off days, like a day where I know I'm not going to be ripping a bench or a squat that day.
Yeah.
But I feel bad if and when I say I feel bad, I don't mean emotionally bad. I physically don't feel great after 2 full rest days off of training. I will feel better if I have something.
Yep.
And an isometric is just one of those so easy to do. I can get in and out of the gym 15, 20 minutes and feel like I really pushed hard.
Yep.
And I'm not going to be sore. In fact, the following day, I usually feel pretty amped. And people are like, oh, what about the neurological fatigue? Well, central fatigue is one of those things that's like borderline a myth at this point.
Yeah.
Like we don't have good research, and most of the research is like, actually it seems that central fatigue from the nervous system, like your brain and spinal cord, recover within 20 seconds, 30 seconds. Peripheral fatigue of the nervous system and surrounding tissues is typically what we are talking about when we talk about neural fatigue.
Yeah.
And so I think I'm gonna not get any real peripheral fatigue from an isometric because there's no mechanical movement happening, and I'm just kind of pushing as hard as my nervous system will fire and recruit.
Yeah.
But there's nothing that really is a downstream effect of that. So it seems like I actually feel really juiced up the next day, which
Especially the real short ones, like you said, like a minute of cumulative tension.
Yeah. Oh yeah, nothing.
Would you consider this an upper body plyometric, or is it not really in the plyo category?
Depends on how heavy you go.
Sure.
The ground contact time, I think this would probably fall more in like a fairly heavy loaded jump category.
Yeah. The only thing like this that I've done in my programming is on the assisted dip machine. I really like it because it's really stable.
Yeah.
But this is good too on the Smith.
Yeah, it's a beauty.
See how
It's
it
a
goes.
beauty. Oh yeah, come on, send that thing, come on. Yeah, yeah.
This is what happens when a marathon runner benches with a college football player.
Has been. Maybe almost a never was.
How do you program this?
And not even thinking of it in terms of a primer, it does. I think about it as almost the same way I would think about a loaded jump, the same way you're thinking about, for an athlete, maybe programming like an Olympic variation of some kind.
Yeah.
We don't need a ton of volume. It's higher velocity. Like, you're gonna get enough stimulus out of low volume. You know, like 2 or 3 sets of 4 to 6 reps is probably fairly sufficient for something in this
Sure.
category. And then, you know, there is the consideration of like, a tendon is a tendon. Well, not quite. For the upper body, you know, the muscles of the forearm, the elbow, the shoulder are different structurally and even react differently over time with tendinopathy protocols and even age degenerative changes than things in like the hip and the knee and Achilles. So some differences, like when it comes to rehabilitative considerations and how long something will last. Like in the shoulder, we know that the rotator cuff, regardless of your health, will have degenerative changes with age, just like we see in the spine. It's like the wrinkles, gray hair, right? You're gonna see them show up a lot more in shoulder tendons of healthy folks, even if they have all other lifestyle factors controlled, where there's just age-related changes of degenerative tendons that happens in the shoulder. We see it all the time. It doesn't necessarily mean you're gonna have symptomatic shoulders, but then when folks go on to have tendon issues in the shoulder, especially that 45, 50 years old and older, you know, those things can last a lot longer, and you're probably not gonna reverse a lot of those structural changes despite having full symptom abatement, full symptom relief, which we know is true in other tendons. Like, you can have full recovery of symptoms within a 4 or 5 month period, even though the tendon is gonna take another year or maybe even up to 2 to change.
Yeah.
But in the shoulder, it seems that it gets the symptoms out and then it kind of just stays sort of the same. It doesn't really fill in with collagen the same way that you would think of other things doing, maybe potentially.
Yeah.
Over time. That treat the donut, not the hole idea
Yeah.
is probably more true for smaller tendons that are more support tendons, not like huge, massive force-producing tendons like the Achilles, like the patellar tendon that we think of, because they're so big and visual, and you can get an ultrasound and watch them in real time and track strain, and yeah, we just don't see the same thing happen with the shoulder, unfortunately. There's Peter Meliaris from Australia. He actually gave like a really good little talk last night about tendon and reaching a certain level of strain, and he talked about a particular protein structure. It says this particular protein holds on to collagen, and when it holds on to collagen and then has a proteoglycan matrix of water around the tendon, that's what allows the tendon to have that hydrostatic pressure to release and store kinetic energy. But once that little proteoglycan is no longer binding well to collagen, now the water just kind of flows wherever it wants and it's able to move in and out of the tendon a little bit more freely. So you're not holding in this hydraulic system anymore, and now you're really truly relying on just protein to protein bonds of these like little proteoglycans that are bound to other little titan structures or things like that we talk about, these passive structures in muscle. And that's why maybe we're seeing ongoing tendon issues in people that start having an acute tendinopathy that develop into chronic tendinopathy. Is like, if you never reverse that process, it's now just water kind of going where it wants to go. And in the shoulder, or these smaller tendons, I mean, we do have, and I'm sorry I'm talking a lot here, but in the forearm, like tennis elbows and golfers' elbows, like in the PT world, it's almost to a point now where it's like, hey, if somebody comes presenting with that kind of stuff, just tell them, hey, here's some modifications, here's maybe some things to think about, you're gonna be fine, because within about 6 months, it's gonna go away on its own. How's it going? So anyways, it's like you don't even treat an elbow that much anymore because it'll go away on its own. And even if degenerative changes still exist long term, they probably won't feel it and it may heal. But the shoulder things, I think, do take a little bit longer. And they're not as resilient to this type of ballistic because we're just not built to do that as much, maybe.
One of the questions I have about that relates to like typical loading protocols, because I see in like Achilles tendinopathy management, people are really quick in the physio world to throw like overloaded eccentrics and like really get heavy direct loading on it. Whereas I feel like it's more common to underload the shoulder, especially as it relates to like rotator cuff stuff, and or rely just on compounds and not have someone doing like an overloaded eccentric isolated internal rotation that's gonna get that same kind of direct loading of the same magnitude that we might see more commonly in an Achilles rehab program. Do you see differences or inconsistencies in like how people approach different structures? And if so, like why is that?
Yeah. Well, so yes, you do. You see drastic underloading, and for rotator cuff, people think rotation. So they just do tons of sideline ER or banded ER, up here, external rotation, and really you could probably just bench and pull and push in multiple directions and pull in multiple directions in your main compounds, and you're gonna get a great stimulus on the rotator cuff.
Yeah.
You just may have to do it differently, like different ranges of motion, different tempos, different loads, but you can still train our rotator cuff very hard through just normal motions, and you could probably fit rotator cuff specific rehab into a very normal structured training program for somebody if they don't want to completely derail and just do these shoulder centric things. And does it get underloaded? Yeah, probably. You do have to be careful though. Shoulders are really pissy for a long time, and it's not one of those things where you can just bang into it as hard and expect the same results, because it just doesn't quite have as much to offload it, I think, potentially. But yeah, I think it's chronically underloaded. I think a great place to start, just for anybody like thinking about this in terms of strength and conditioning, you start with general stuff, and maybe more on the volume side. You got to know what hard is. So like doing sets of 12 to 15 and working closer to failure is okay. So like when you start with isos, even though like the Berlin group has done a lot of work in the isometric realm where they're doing or seeing a lot more effect of doing like a 3-second overcoming isometric hold where you have the most mechanical advantage in the muscle to get the most tendon strain.
Yeah.
And doing like something, I think it was the most recent study had 4 sets of 3 seconds, and they did 5 rounds of that. And that was what they did for, I believe as a patellar.
Yeah.
Tendon up about 60 degrees of knee extension, and I think the same is true for the Achilles. I don't know if that's been investigated in the shoulder, but even though that's where we see a great stimulus, for people where pain is the limiting factor, you may start with something like a 30 or 45 second ISO and more of a yielding ISO where just, hey, hold this 5-pound dumbbell and just see if you can like interact with that. And I think that can do a lot more for people. And Peter Meliaris, again, last night was talking about the nervous system in somebody that is dealing with a lot of pain. They may go to push into something like an overcoming ISO, and that nervous system will shut them down. But if you give them an objective thing that they have to hold, they may have a better time overcoming that initial, the inertia of getting started in rehab by just holding 20 kilos and just biting, because it's like, I gotta hold this weight, versus if I'm just pushing into something, somebody may stop before they're actually reaching a volitional contraction that gives us the strain we want. So just get juicy, chase that juicy pump, baby. Yeah, let's do it.
Like, so my experience with my subscap was I pushed it heavy, and it felt better compared to just like underloading it. Everything for like sets of 15
So
hurt.
how do you know?
How do you know which way to go when you're in pain and like you're scared to do more? Like, what are your thoughts and your guidance on that?
Yeah, so exactly like your experiment, it is an experiment. You don't know going in. You don't know how someone's going to respond. And so usually like the goal is with some of those longer, lighter ones, you're not really sure how that's going to go until you do it. And so if it's their first initial exposure, sometimes going on the conservative side and just planning to undershoot it a little bit is the safe move, because the worst thing you do is you get some buy-in and you tell this person and you educate them on like tendon loading, especially if somebody is already thinking that they have structural deficiency that needs some kind of medical treatment, right? And they have imaging that should, no, it's torn, and you're like, I know, take a deep breath, we're gonna be okay. Tendon load is helpful, and we can have positive adaptations. But if then their first experience with it is very poor, and you put them in the hole where it's like, oh my gosh, I haven't been to the store in weeks, and Q said I should do this, then you may lose them. Or even if you don't lose them, you're gonna have to crawl out of that hole for a little while, because now you have this a little bit more of like sensitization, this inflammatory potentially response in the tendon that you didn't really want. And so I think just undershooting it and then figuring out with somebody like you, man, I actually had a heavy experience and it feels really good. All right, sweet, we can pursue that, but you won't know until you kind of are pulling different levers. And I think that's why we typically probably go with a little bit more conservative route versus like, yeah buddy, load that bitch up, we're going hard. You look at like some of that research that came out maybe 2 years ago on like
they really were trying to assess what did it take, what's the minimum dose to just like quantitatively maintain muscle volume measured by DEXA. And it was like 1 set near failure for each muscle group, 1 time per week. Lasted like 3 months or so, like 3 to 4 months.
It's crazy.
Like, dude, like the floor of this stuff is so low that going back to the tendon conversation, like I think, you know, tendon or collagen synthesis in the tendon is like 36 hours plus, whereas muscle protein synthesis can happen in like a 24-hour window. So there's like, you know, early on when somebody's really painful, you can do high frequency, but as they start getting into like true loading, now you can't do that kind of frequency anymore because it's a lot more than just the sensitization pain response that you're up against. Now you actually do have to care about some bio type stuff out of the psychosocial. Now the bio does start becoming a little bit more a part of the matrix there because, dude, how often can you push? And does it even, not even how often can you, but how often do you need to yield this the desired adaptation? And sometimes I feel like people get program bloat where it's like they do all this stuff for their shoulder all the time, and it's like, dude, at some point just fucking train. It'll be okay. Here's your parameters, but like lifting 3 or 4 times a week and you're probably gonna be okay, man. What other things do you like in life, you know?
I think a lot of times what I see in like the rehab world is overdosing but underloading still. Of like just throwing so much shit at something, but none of it is super stimulating. You know? But like on the other side, there is sometimes that pain relieving effect of just moving and desensitization. So like I've had good experiences with my shoulder of just load it really heavy for a couple good sets here and there, but then every day just keep it moving. Like
something.
Do some arm circles, do some like push-ups in the countertop, just like stay active. But like that's not the training stimulus. It's just you know, there's movement and there's exercise, and I think if they blur too much, it turns into like a little bit of junk sometimes.
Yes, you need to rest a certain amount that you're recovered and you can like give it the best effort, but there's almost that like bubble that if you rest too much, or like a heavy set, right? Like a heavy lifting set, like if you kind of rest too long, you almost kind of start losing touch with like the feeling of this, how hard this is going to be. You lose that drive for it. And I almost think the in between days of just like getting the shoulder to move kind of like lowers that threshold of sensitivity, where when you do go to load it, it's like, I've been moving it, and it just kind of has this general like lower barrier to cross. So yeah, give it a go. Yeah, you might as well finish it up. Come on, just it's moving. You're gonna be fine.
Couldn't lock out that tricep.
That was great. That was a good set though.
I don't know about you, but I feel my chest so much on it.
This is incredible.
It's an incredible machine.
Yeah, I don't know if I've had a juicy pump in the chest like this in a while. This is great.
Have you ever used the Arsenal T-bar?
No, but I'm stoked.
It's the most humbling machine you'll ever use in your life.
I mean, it's, I see there's a point, like right there. And then
heavy.
below. Wow, 1 plate each side is, that's different. Oh, hell yeah. Oh, buddy. Oh, yeah. There you go, good old reach, love it. It's always funny because you go to PT school, you know, and you're like seeing these like movement screens and all this nonsense, and you know, the rib flare is this like demonized, medicalized problem, the pathologized issue. And then you get out in the real world and you're like, see people with all kinds of shapes of sternum and ribs, and like they're doing all kinds of incredible stuff. Like why is that such a specific, you know, or how your ribs sit in relative to your pelvis is like this whole, like, I don't know, dude. It seems like a pretty wide variation on normal there.
Not that everyone has to be super shredded, but if you just train abs enough to have abs, I've never seen someone with abs worried about the shape of their rib cage. I've never seen someone like a shredded 8-pack that's like worried about a rib flare.
Right.
Excuse me, bro.
Hi.
Are you the strength coach from UNT?
Yeah.
That is what's up.
Oh, what's
I've
up?
followed you for so long.
That's awesome, man. What's your name?
Kyle.
Kyle Q.
I'm a strength coach at Edina for their football team. I coach the wide receivers and I'm the strength coach.
Dude, sweet.
I've used so much of your shit. So
Really?
thank you. Oh, hell yeah.
Dude, that's awesome.
That's awesome,
Yeah.
man. Kyle, good to meet you,
I
dog.
was like, I'd look on this and be like, I swear this is that motherfucker. I
Yeah.
swear. So,
That's
good
awesome.
shit. Keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
We're shooting the YouTube video. You mind if we include that? Because
Hell yeah.
That's
Thank
awesome.
you, man.
Yeah, do it for sure.
Just that weight makes such a difference.
Dude, it's, oh yeah. I really like partials on rows just because when I play back the footage, it's never as partial as I thought it was.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
I feel like I'm not doing anything, and then I watch the footage and I'm like, it's actually still something.
Yeah. You ever seen the Meadows reverse fly, the rear delt swings?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah,
dude.
30 to 50
I
reps
remember
of
that.
just partial. And
I
Greg
was
Knuckles.
doing that like 10 years ago.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Greg Knuckles, who I respect, immensely, talked about rear delt growth and how he loved those specifically. And so ever since then, I'm just like, yeah, of course, those are the best. And Greg Knuckles said they were the best.
Yeah.
And I love it. So in rows, same idea, like that long end range there. It makes me think of that, and I'm like, yeah, this is good stuff.
Yeah.
Go. Oh yeah. Yeah. It's a lot more full range right there than you think. Keep going. You're doing good. Come on. Yeah, that's some Seedman range of motion still. Get to that 90. Come on.
You know what I love about Seedman?
Huh.
The inconsistency in which side of 90
Yes.
he does.
Yep.
Some of it's the lengthened half, some of it's the shortened half.
Yes.
And his best muscle groups are the muscles he trains in the lengthened half.
Yeah.
Like his biceps
That's
are
funny.
great because he does bottom half curls.
That's hilarious.
Hopefully this is where you'll see how much better I am at vertical pull than horizontal pull. Because I can max this one out. Dude, that bicep is nuts.
This one you almost might need a wrist wrap.
Yeah,
Oh.
I was actually using that the other day. I got some if you want. Just for fun, I'll do a set without, see what
Yeah.
I get, and then we'll add the wraps and see
Yeah.
what happens.
Shoo! This guy. Pull up king.
Oh, God.
Come on. Come on. You got a lot of those. Yeah, how many pull-ups do you think you can do? If you just like fresh went just straight at body weight? You get in the 30s?
Yeah.
Yeah?
There you go.
Come on, dog. That's it. Yeah.
But I just try to get forearms parallel with the floor at the bottom.
Yeah. Okay.
And I usually target like above my chin. I was gonna ask, like with all your years as an athlete, what are some of the personal injuries you've had to overcome and that sort of thing?
All kinds of stuff. Achilles tendon issues.
Yeah, that's my biggest thing in my life.
Really? Achilles? Yeah, I had some serious, Achilles stuff go on. I have dislocated this shoulder and the clavicle on this side, like when I clean or front squat, it sticks out because I broke the collarbone on this side. So I've got this big old bump just on one side, but not on the other, that kind of makes things a little awkward, or I'll get bloody, pretty bloody and bruised up there. Dislocated and broken fingers, turf toe, all the typical stuff, plantar fasciitis, back pain, dealt with that, femoral acetabular impingement, torn meniscus, PCL, fractured ribs, I don't know, concussions, just like the little bumps and bruises that you forgot that you did it because like a broken finger, like you can still play. So you just kind of like, I don't know, it's a broken finger.
Right.
I
don't want to normalize like doing dumb stuff, but I do want to normalize like pain and injury is a normal part of the human experience.
Oh, totally.
Help people not catastrophize it so much by being like, look at me, I'm strong, healthy, fit, feel great today, but like I've had my fair share of injuries and all that kind of shit too.
Yeah, dude, and that's the thing. I think a lot of physical therapists also get really, really like scared or worried about their profession or their credibility if like they get hurt. And there's a lot of PTs that struggle with chronic pain, and they feel guilty about talking about it, or that they can't, or that they have injury lifting, and that it's like this like, shouldn't you know better? Like, how are you getting hurt in your training program when you know stuff? And I've hurt my back lifting. I've dealt with incredible back pain, like even at UNC when I was a coach. I mean, I was literally one of the first days back for conditioning in summer. I walked to the field, and the entire time on the field with a whistle and a stopwatch helping the coach, I either was on one knee or literally all fours.
Oh yeah.
Because my back, I couldn't stand.
Yeah.
It hurt so bad, and I just stood there and was like yelling at kids, just coaching from my fucking knees. And you know, there's this pressure of like, well, you're supposed to be the guy that never, like, you know enough that this can't happen to you. And it's like, no, dude, I'm a human. The same way that you get sad and depressed or angry as a psych therapist, like I think about that when I talk to my therapist, like she has emotions too. And just because she's a professional at this and knows a lot doesn't mean that she can't experience the full range of human experience. So why do therapists or people that know better, why are they not capable of experiencing the whole realm of human experience the same way everybody else is?
Sometimes shit does happen, but like just being honest with people of like, these are the risks that we're potentially looking at. This is how we're going to try to mitigate them. This is what I want you to tell me if you experience this, this, and that. But stuff still happens, and you have to be ready for it.
Yeah, 100%. Is that any different than going into a relationship with someone? Is that any different than starting a business? Is it any different than doing any other cool thing you've ever accomplished in life? Is there's always some level of associated risk with cool stuff. And so why is it different with training when you want, you know, you're ambitious and you have these high goals? You know, it's so funny how people are so risk averse in certain areas of their life, and then others complete, you know, off the rails. And it's like, it's just being a human, man. We are entering an age in general where people think that, especially in the medical world, where just because we have research, you know, a lot of research and billions of dollars dumped into this stuff, and professionals that have done it for 2, 3, 4 decades, that we should know. And we just don't. You know, it's, I heard an analogy about the bark on trees that then became aspirin. You know, people knew that if they ate this bark off the tree, that it took care of headaches. It was awesome, you know, and then later we find aspirin, right? Well, we're kind of in the tree bark stage with a lot of rehab, where we know that certain things tend to work pretty well. But why, and why people have pain, we're so far removed from even answering those questions that like, we can land on these things and like, it's okay, you know. And I use the analogy of the sand dune a lot because we in modernism, people want to measure and optimize everything, and it's like measuring a sand dune in the desert. Right? The second you start stepping on it and measuring it, now it's in your shoes and you displace sand and the wind is going. So every time you go to measure, it's not the same thing anymore. Just by the Heisenberg effect, by looking at it, you change it. Right? And it's very true in rehab. It's always changing, and that's okay.
I like the post you had recently. It was like, with all the billions of dollars we've poured into low back pain research and that kind of stuff, like the one thing that stands out as the biggest recommendation based off of everything that we know is to stay active. It's like, sometimes it really is that simple. Like in the sea of complexity, like just because the processes and the mechanisms are complex doesn't mean the solution is equally complex. Sometimes there's very simple solutions to very complex problems.
Bingo. Therein lies the beauty, is people want to look to these really fancy sounding solutions of these fascial planes, and you know, this way, this tiny degree of movement that you have to stack your pelvis, and they use these really large pseudoscientific sounding themes and things, and man, you know, it sounds great, and I think people are just so fucking desperate for help sometimes because of the rigmarole that they get in the healthcare system, and you know, being so over medicalized and so overly imaged that, you know, pretty soon a lot of these guru things start sounding really good because there's somebody who's promising you that they can find the solution that you've never heard of, because it couldn't possibly be that simple. You know, and I think about like with business, or I'm going to go up to 25. So many people are averse to taking that risk to start their own business because it sounds like a lot, and it is. You know, it is to get things up and running. There's some tasks that are an undertaking at times, and it can be risky. But like, look at all the people who have done it. You know, and I think about that all the time. You know, look at all the people figuring it out. There's no possible way that all of these people are smarter, are more humanly adaptable. Look at all the people who heal from injuries and come back from breaking their back or pain. And it's like, there's no, just statistically, there's no way that all of these humans are somehow better than you. And they figured it out a lot of the times in very suboptimal environments. You can too, man. Like, what's stopping you from, you know, thinking that that is not within the realm of possibilities? You know? That's probably good. I don't love the gym mentality of it being like real hardo, alpha.
Yeah.
You know, because it's not like, oh, let's go to war. It's not that hard, not that serious. But you do just have to make up your mind at some point where it's like, you know, this is not ideal, and I hurt.
Yeah.
And I can't do things right now that I used to be able to do. And yeah, is that frustrating? Yeah, and it's maddening because it attacks you and plagues you in all kinds of things in your life. But once you just accept and bring it in wholeheartedly and just acknowledge like, this is where I'm at, and I'm gonna get through this, and today is not how it's always gonna be.
Yeah.
That alone.
I think the difference between that and the like gym bro, let's go to war mentality is like the latter is very much just like go as hard as you can all the time, like no breaks kind of mentality. Whereas when I say like just push through it and that sort of thing, it's more about consistency than like the degree of intensity of like, I'm not saying just like go 10 out of 10. I'm saying just keep showing up. Yeah. Like no matter what's going on, show up in some way, shape or form. Like that's the type of mental toughness I'm referring to.
Yeah.
And like if that's 6 out of 10, if that's one working set, if that's 2 gym sessions a week instead of 6, like just show up for you. Like have the mental toughness to be there. Because at the end of the day, like it's not about how many sets you did today. It's did you show up today?
Yeah.
I interviewed my grandpa who's 81 and still running long distances.
I love that.
And I asked him like, what is your advice to people if they want to get to where you are and like still be as fit and active as you are in their 80s? And his biggest piece of advice was just don't stop. Like no matter what's going on, like his wife died, his dog died, he's gotten sick, he's had surgeries, but he just keeps doing something. Like he does what he can do on any given day. He's like, it's so much harder to get started than to keep going.
The sheer percentage of people that are 81 and consistently show up to train in some form or capacity is like such an infinitesimally small number that if you do that, you're gonna beat all of your peers at like, so I think about it this way, like for those who didn't have a lot of, athletic success growing up, that's fine, because you've got another 50 to 60 years to beat every single one of your peers by just being consistent.
And he started running in his 60s. So
Dude.
it's never too late, but once you start, just keep going. There we go.
Good.